I wonder if over the past month or so you have found yourself shying away from the news. Or perhaps on the other hand, you found yourself drawn to it rather like a moth to a flame. Perhaps wondering, I wonder what he's done or said today. I am, of course, talking about our curious fascination with the new and former President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Given the incredible amount of change since Donald Trump gained office, we can perhaps be forgiven for thinking that the inauguration was some 6 months or so ago. In fact, it was rather less than a month ago, 27 days to be precise. And in that time, again, just to remind ourselves, the wealthiest country in the world has announced its intention to withdraw from the World Health Organization. It stepped back from its previous commitment to help combat AIDS globally. It's all but shut down the USAID International Development Programme. The second highest polluting country in the world has pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, blocked offshore wind, frozen spending on green infrastructure, and committed itself to increasing oil production. The Trump administration has dismantled much of the previous government's approach to diversity, equality, and inclusion, encouraged discrimination, particularly of LGBT people, and waged a very public war on immigration. Trump has called publicly for what is effectively ethnic cleansing in Gaza, and seems to be preparing to step back from support for Ukraine as part of an imposed peace deal on that country. He's threatened or imposed tariffs that are putting global trade flows and the world economy increasingly at risk. Trump speaks of flooding the zone, doing so much all at the same time that no one can possibly oppose it all. So thinking back to our parable of 17 camels, and in the context of all that rapid and quite aggressive change that the US has seen in this past month, I wonder how Mr. Trump might have resolved that particular question of inheritance. Probably very quickly, very simplistically, and yes, probably with a chainsaw. Fewer camels left in one piece, and a great deal of disharmony with his fellow beneficiaries. Yes, there is a massive process of change underway in the United States, and because of that country's immense wealth and influence across the wider world too. And it's a change that seems to me to be informed primarily by self-interest, one that prioritizes the strong over the weak, that asserts the right of the individual over community, and which perhaps most frighteningly marginalizes those who are different from a perceived desired norm. It's a political economy of win or lose, where the winners seem destined to become richer and more powerful, and the losers become poorer and more marginalized. Now, preachers are often encouraged to stay away from politics when we stand up here. But for me, this seismic change goes way beyond mere politics. It's more about a way of living, the creation of a society that I think is so at odds with the social construct expressed by Jesus, not least in this Gospel of Luke and not least in those Beatitudes we heard earlier on. And it's relevant because what happens in the US, its political, its economic, its social discourse is so incredibly impactful on our own country. We can't declare immunity from it. We can't let them simply get on with it and watched with bemused fascination from the sidelines. To some extent, these political, social, and economic forces already exist in this country, and they can only be intensified and emboldened by what is happening on the other side of the pond. These Lucan Beatitudes that we've just heard, like the Beatitudes in Matthew, turned the known world upside down. And they continue to turn the world upside down wherever and whenever God's kingdom breaks through into our otherwise selfish world. Luke's recounting of these Beatitudes feels perhaps starker than that of Matthew, not least because, as well as blessings, it expresses woes or curses or troubles in the version I read from the Message just now. Jesus speaks blessings on those who have lost everything, for those who are hungry and those for whom tears flow freely. He warns trouble ahead for those who have it made, who are self-satisfied and who think that life is all fun and games. It's a manifesto for the poor, the hungry, and those who weep. And it's a manifesto that prioritizes community over self-serving individualism. Jesus is announcing so very clearly that God is turning the world the right way up at last. As Tom Wright suggests, it's a message that we must proclaim clearly to the world too. As Christians, he says, we believe that what Jesus began with the call of the 12 and the sharp-edged teaching of blessings and curses remains in force today. This is the shape of the kingdom which still turns the world upside down, or perhaps the right way up, as much as ever it did. And it's a message reinforced by our reading this morning from Jeremiah, which warns so starkly about human self-reliance and the risk of turning away from God. When we place our trust in ourselves, we wither and die like a bush in the wastelands. We fail to gain true prosperity, the deep riches of the kingdom. But when we place our trust in God, when we adopt this ancient life-giving wisdom, this way that runs like living water through both Old and New Testament, we human beings will truly flourish. We will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. When I read these Lucan Beatitudes a little bit more closely, I also find myself thinking of that incredible sermon by the Bishop of Washington, Marianne Budd, at Donald Trump's inauguration last month. You might have seen clips of it on the news, but if you haven't, I would highly recommend finding it and watching it on Google. And I would watch the whole thing. It's amazing. In it, she exhorted the new president to unify the country by honouring the dignity of every human being, and by governing with honesty and humility. And she pleaded for him to have mercy on the vulnerable, on gay, lesbian and transgender people, on immigrants and on refugees. It was the most remarkable example of speaking truth to power that I have ever seen. An act of incredible bravery, and one encouraged by Jesus through these Lucan Beatitudes. Instead of simply seeking the approval of the president, of flattering and indulging him as she could easily have chosen to do, Bishop Marianne spoke the gospel truth. And yes, I suspect all heaven did indeed applaud. But if a path of human self-interest, of individual self-sufficiency, of winners and losers, of marginalization of the weak and the different is so at odds with God's kingdom vision, what's the alternative? And what is our role in making it a reality? The common good is an ancient idea that resonates across many Christian traditions, and particularly through Catholic social teaching. And I think it provides the alternative, the antidote, if you like, to much that we see in our political discourse today. The Charity Together for the Common Good defines it as the shared life of a society in which everyone can flourish as we act together in different ways that all contribute towards that goal, enabled by social conditions that mean every single person can participate. We create these conditions and pursue that goal by working together across our differences, each of us taking responsibility according to our calling and ability. How different does that feel from some of the narrative that we're increasingly seeing and experiencing, yes, in the United States, but if we're honest, in this country too? There are concepts here that feel so at one with the upside down nature of the kingdom that reverberates throughout our scripture. Sharing, flourishing, building relationship, working together towards a common goal, enabling everyone to participate, working together across differences, safeguarding creation, taking responsibility, treating people equally and with respect. It's a way of living and being that has its formation in the teaching and ministry of Jesus, and which reflects the upside-down nature of God's kingdom, yes, expressed so clearly through these Beatitudes. But like most things that are both complex and deeply precious, the common good is something that we need to work hard at. I would argue that much of humanity, most of humanity, is a long way from organising itself on these principles. And it feels like we're moving further away rather than closer to them. As I mentioned earlier, we can and we should seek to proclaim the upside-down nature of the kingdom to those around us. But I suspect it's unlikely that too many of us will have the chance to speak truth to power, to presidents or to prime ministers in the way that Bishop Marianne was able to. Instead, building the common good begins in our day-to-day, in our individual contexts across the communities, organisations and networks that we are part of. and as ever. Walking the walk is more important than talking the talk. The common good is more than just a set of beliefs and values. It's something that is generated by us as we act together, starting with our neighbours, our friends, our colleagues, our communities, our networks. It's about modelling those best practices, building relationship, including everyone unreservedly, treating them equally and with respect, sharing generously and without expectation of anything in return. It's something that, without consciously thinking about it, informs our work at Mind Over Mountains, the mental health charity that some of you will know that I have the privilege to lead, and which this church has so generously supported. Thank you. As a small and ambitious and growing and very busy charity in a really challenging funding environment, it would be really easy for us to focus inwards, to stick to our knitting, to focus on what we need to do to succeed, perhaps even to survive. But without necessarily being intentional about it, we've built a culture that is focused outwards, that cares deeply about partnership, that seeks to support other charities and providers where we have something that we think is worth sharing. We do that without any expectation of return. But importantly, fundamentally, vitally, we know that good things tend to happen when we share generously. We know that good things tend to happen when we are in community. And to me, when that happens, it feels like a little bit of the common good breaking through and having an impact on the world. It feels a little bit like just a little bit of God's kingdom breaking through in the world. And so this week, I'd ask you to think a little bit about the common good. I'd invite you to watch Bishop Marianne's sermon to inspire you just a little bit. And I'd invite you to prayerfully reflect on where in your life you can be helping to build a little bit more of the common good. It might be at work, it might be where you volunteer, it might be in a club or organisation, it might be here in Wendover, or it might be further away. It might be through and with this church. How can you bring a little bit of common good to the world this year? Because I suspect our wise man might suggest that it's the best way to make the most of all those amazing camels that we've inherited. Amen.
Seated, we now come to the excitement of the notices. Oh. And I'm losing some of them here. First of all, to remind those who are normally involved in Sparklers, you get tomorrow off because it's half term. So there's no Sparklers tomorrow, but there will be Sparklers Monday week. So if you're feeling bereft, don't worry. You only have to wait 7 days and then you can be back for more sparkling. This week, the Sages will be meeting at Friday at 10:15 in the Christian Centre. There is information about Sages in the email update, but if you'd like further information about it, I'm just looking to see who normally goes from here. If you normally go, Jackie, you go, don't you? Do you want to wave so people know to come and have a word with you if they're interested in finding out about Sages? Some further exciting news, and I know you've all been waiting to hear about this, that is that the electoral roll is being completely revised this year. Every now and then we have to start again regardless of how long you've been on the electoral roll, the names are cleared off it and they have to be compiled afresh. But what's particularly exciting is St Mary's has entered the 21st century for this. Oh, and it was at the end, was it? Yes. It is now possible, or it will soon be possible, to join the electoral roll through the website. You need to register and have an account set up, for which this is showing you how to do that and where to register. But there will be further information in the coming weeks about the electoral roll. But please, if you do struggle with doing it on your smartphone or on your computer at home, there will be some paper versions of the forms available from Jackie Smith in the coming weeks. But if you can do it online, it really does make things a lot easier for us. So I do encourage you to do that if you're able to. And then finally, I wonder how many of you this morning, when you got up, you went into your kitchen, you turned on the tap and you filled up your kettle or perhaps a glass with some water to make a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or some other form of refreshment, and you probably didn't think twice about the fact that as you turned on the tap, water came out clean, water that you could safely drink without worrying about getting ill. There's an awful lot of places in the world where that's just not possible. And one place where that's not possible is in Ghana, in West Africa. And so in Ghana, they are reliant on bottled water for drinking water so that people can have a safe source of water. But of course, bottles produce a lot of plastic waste. And so someone has come up with the idea of putting water in plastic bags like this. This uses substantially less plastic. This is 1/2 litre of water in here. Doesn't look like it, but it's 1/2 litre of water. So that's the same as you get in one of those large bottles of water. But the trouble is that this is still plastic. This is still producing waste. And when the water has been drunk, you're left with these that litter the streets. I've been to Ghana, and I can tell you there is a lot of plastic litter on the streets. It not only fills the streets, it fills the ditches, it fills the rivers, and it is a real problem. But there's a group in Ghana that have come up with a solution. They take these plastic bags and they turn them into things that can be of use, such as this. You could even use this as a rucksack if you wanted to. But I mean, it is a bag, it's a drawstring bag. Why am I telling you about this? Because there is an opportunity for you to find out more about these and other products by visiting the Just shop in the High Street, where these are now on sale. You will be doing your bit to help support not only clean water in Ghana, but helping to support keeping this out of the water so that we're not causing additional pollution to our planet. So do pop in to Just and find out more about this product. I'm going to leave that there and hopefully it'll stay there.